And I'm not sure if anyone will take this up, but there is the offer you can do your own independent final project in lieu of the quizzes. Most people choose to do, in lieu of the labs. Most people choose to do the labs. It's probably easier during this time frame, and that's fine with me, but I do throw that out there if you have something you want to study. I like people doing an independent project, but it's just hard to do in this compressed time frame. I mean, in a whole semester, you can do more things like that when there's more free time in between classes for you to work on things. Are there any questions at this point? So we got a head start on this lecture last Monday, if you recall. So I'm sure we'll finish that early and get a head start on next Monday's lecture. Given where we'll be at, maybe next Wednesday or the following Monday, I'll try to put a work day in. I'll verify that for sure. I think we'll be soon have enough content under your belt so you can work on some labs here. And again, that takes away from the time that you need to spend outside class. You can get some stuff out of the way during the class session. So we spoke at length in the second half on Monday about REST services. What they are, RESTful communications. Remember, the REST service is a URL. We looked at a REST endpoint, a REST services directory. We spent some time, I showed you our company, as well as you saw where to get all the many ESRI REST endpoints available, and that lets us look at data remotely off ESRI server, off their ArcGIS Online servers. And ArcGIS Online will be the next topic once we finish talking about REST. So we did that. We looked at how you can view data using REST online through a REST endpoint. Remember, you could look at it in a JavaScript viewer, in ArcGIS Online, in Google Earth, or in ArcMap itself. We also looked at how you can drill down into individual layers in a REST service if it's a feature service. Remember, the map service just provides an image of the map. A feature service actually you could do that in a map service also. This is a map server. And a feature server actually serves up actual objects for you, GIS objects. We'll talk about that more. And a bunch of different slides about the information in a tiled map service. And we saw we got a legend. We were looking at that household size service. And on the bottom, we stopped right around here. So on the bottom of each service, when a user develops a REST or publishes a REST service, they choose what types of operations are available. And at the bottom of each REST endpoint, we can see that whoever created this REST endpoint exposed those operations to the public. So users of this REST endpoint can export the map, return changes, or generate a KML file from the map. We're going to focus on export map. For any support, I guess we did talk about this a little bit, but we'll just review. For any supported operation, there is a link to an API reference up in the upper right. That gives you all the possible commands and queries that you can use for that operation. So, and we're going to spend some time, I didn't want to really get into that at the end of the night. We're going to spend some time programming the export map operation, where you can use the REST service and actually request a map back. And you're going to see how to write that in code. We've done that in websites that aren't really GIS sites at all. We do a website for New York City Emergency Management. And there's a page which just about, say, a school. There's no GIS functionality on it, but on the page our programmer wrote a REST request to go to ESRI. You'll get a map of the school's vicinity and just place it on the school page as an image. So it really allows flexibility for you to integrate your sites with your GIS maps with other sites that might not even be GIS centric. A website, yes?
So do you have to coordinate with Israel or is it
It's a no, yes and no. For this, no. Some of these services that we're using are completely free to anybody.
And so the link that they can go to get the information they need.
Yeah, is available to the public.
Okay.
They do have other maps and services where you would have to have credits and an account. that we'll talk about. But the nice thing about, a programmer can build that link so that the person using the site doesn't even have to do it. So your JavaScript will use the link, go back at the map. The user just sees the map pop up, and you've done all the dirty work behind the scenes. So maybe we did talk about this, but just to review quickly, we got further than I remember. So there's two main ways for sending a REST request: GET and POST. And as we see, we'll usually use GET. GET puts all the parameters of your request into the URL. And you'll see that again in a second. So the URL will have the URL of the REST service, the operation, say export, question mark, and then all the things like what are the geographic boundaries of the map you want, what zoom level, which file format, etc. All of that's in the URL. And the advantage of the GET then is that it's easy to read. You can look right in the URL. You can even change it right in the URL. And it allows you to bookmark. So if it's a request that you are using from your browser over and over, you can just bookmark it. These are the situations where GET is not appropriate. And that's where the requests are so large that they exceed 1,024 characters. A URL, a website address, cannot be longer than 1,024 characters. Also, a GET is read-only. So if your REST request would make a change, like that tablet app that adds photos to a map, any REST request that makes a change cannot use GET, because the GET request is read-only. So in those cases, we use a POST request, and the POST hides the request in a form submit. We talked about form submits right at the beginning of the course. And luckily for this, you don't have to build the form in this situation. That's handled on the Esri side. But notice here, you just see the service URL. And here's another example where you can't see the whole page. I used the query operation, and I queried basically for state equals Ohio. I hit post, and notice the URL doesn't have any parameters. It just has the service URL map server query. And because I hit post, my request was sent to Esri using a form rather than using the URL. And there's the result. Responses can vary widely depending on what is desired. Obviously, there's many different ways in which we can specify output, and we'll see this with export map. In your request, whether it's a guest, you'll see f equals. You won't see the f equals if it's a post, but it'll be there. The f equals parameter indicates what type of output you're hoping to get in return. The default is HTML. If you don't put f equals, the answer will come back as in an HTML format. But you can return JSON, and we talked about the JSON format on Monday. You could return just an image. You'll do that for the lab, and we'll do some of that tonight. You can return a KMZ or a KML file for Google Earth, etc. Or an LYR file, which you use in ArcMap to symbolize a layer. So again, that's with the f equals parameter. Oops. So here, and when you, one thing we'll clarify shortly too is on the REST page, there's two ways you can make a REST request. You can write it in code, or you can use the REST request page that ESRI has for you. This is a screenshot of the page. So if it's in code and you're building URL, you'd have to type f equals. Here in the REST request page, it just has format. I've chosen JSON, and you see what came back here is JSON. The result is in the JSON length format. So I should have opened this up soon. You can get to a lot of these pages using the services.arcgysonline.com. And this, generally what you see here are the ones they have for free that anyone in the world can use. But if you, depending on your access level with Esri, there's a lot more out there. So go to NAT GEO map server. And I'm saying let's use the export operation on the Esri National Geographic Map Service. So we're going to take advantage of that. Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Which example you do now? Like a get?
A get. Yeah, I think that's what we do. Yeah.
Okay.
I just like to follow along here too. So we'll use a get on this particular map service, the NAT GEO World Map. And you can see here it's a map designed to use a general reference map. I use this a lot. It looks like a National Geographic style map. They're known for their cartography.
So, how does it come back? Does it come back? Does it come back in the form of like a PDF? I mean, like.
It could. We'll go over. Yeah, we can specify how it comes back. And
Okay.
you know, I think you can do PDF. Now I think about it, I didn't list that on the options. It could come back as an image in a variety of formats, and then we'll definitely look at that in a second.
That's what I'm trying to make sure I distinguish the difference between the get and the post.
Yeah.
And the post, you're saying it can come back as an actual HTML.
They both, whether you use get or post, that you could get the back anyway. I mean, you could get an image back anyway. The get and post is more how you're making the request, but you could still have it come back in similar formats.
Okay.
So that's a good question to help clarify that. And so this explains, I think we zoomed in a lot closer here than we did in Asia. But it goes down to 144,000 worldwide, actually goes down to 9,000 in North America. Where we noticed that on Monday. And if I go to the bottom of that page, you'll see that export map is one of the supported operations. So one of the things we can do, I'll do this in a second, is on the page you can just fill out this form. You put in coordinates and you can put in a spatial reference. We'll talk about the ID in a second. Image format, here's how you would specify how it's returned. Output result, we'll look at that in a second, and then you click get or post. So let's start that. There's NAT GEO. So for bounding box, I can put that's the first two numbers in the projection, which I'm going to put 102717. That projection is Western New York State Plain NAD 1983. That's our local map projection. We'll talk about that in a second. The first two numbers are the X and Y minimum, so the coordinates at the lower left. The last two numbers are the coordinates in the upper right, the X and Y maximum for the box. Notice the different, yes, see PDF is an option there. These are the different image formats you can request. I'll keep it paying, maybe I'll make a higher quality. Or you can specify a specific number of bits. And for format, I can pick HTML or image, and I'll say get. And see, it went to the server and retrieved that image. So notice if I click this is just an image, and it came back as an image. Notice the request. Let me paste that into Word. So notice the automated Esri page generated this URL request, and because it's a GET, it's right there in the URL. So there's the URL of the REST endpoint. Services at arcgis.com, ArcGIS REST services. the name of the server, National Geographic World Map. Map server is the type. That'll be map server or feature server. I think tonight we'll get to the point where I'll show you how to publish one from my work computer. And then export is the operation. Question mark, and then notice that's all the parameters that I put in. Now, if you were building this in code, you would need to know this. You would get that from that API reference link that I showed you in the slideshow a couple minutes ago. So I could bookmark that, and it's going to do the same thing. And notice F equals image. As the output. And I'm looking for format ping. It's got, oh, there it is. And here's where it specifies the PNG image format. I knew it was in there somewhere. So I can't bookmark that, I guess, in Chrome because it's not bookmark this page. Oh, it didn't bookmark it. Well, anyway, I could also copy that URL, paste it into another tab, and it's going to do the same thing. I can change. I think without a spatial reference, it'll default to world. Well, let me try geographic coordinates. See what that does. Oops. No, it defaults to Web Mercator 102.100, so it's not going to take. Now I have to try to remember. $43.26. There you go. So now I changed a couple things. I changed to 4326, which is the projection for just geographic WGS84, and then when I did that, I was able to input latitude and longitude because it was a geographic coordinate system. Otherwise, you have to put in the projected units, which are more complicated, like here. The default projected units are in the millions because Web Mercator is a projection that a lot of web developers use. It's a worldwide map projection, projected to meters. A couple other things I can change. See, if I say PDF, it should prompt a PDF to download. It doesn't seem to want to do that. With an HTML format, it actually returns the image in the page, so I can see an update right on my export page of the new image. Now, if I still using get, if I choose JSON as the output, it returns a JSON object. Notice here it has this in it. That's the URL of the image that was generated. the issue with doing that, and so if I paste that image, and notice that image came up. So with JSON, our Esri's server went out there and made this map for us, and then gave us a URL. That doesn't let it hang around forever. Something to keep in mind is if you're producing a map like this, you would need to present it to the user immediately. I guess you would generally do that anyway. I don't know their settings, but usually there's a server cleanup session. Imagine, if you will, if all these images that everyone's doing stay there forever, Esri's server will fill up at some point with map images. So they have a routine that at some interval, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 15 minutes or 4 hours, it cleans up these. So that image will be available for some period of time, and then it will be cleaned up. The JSON also gives the height and width of the output, gives the map extent well, that's interesting. It actually projected the map extent to Web Mercator, even though I put in the latitude and longitude. It's projected that into 102.100 is Web Mercator. It projected it into meters, and it gives the map scale. Notice width and height. Remember we talked about the IMG tag 2 classes or so ago. You may not want it to be 400 by 400. I can, under image size, and change this back to image output. I changed image to 800 by 800. And notice now the map is twice as big. So that's where you would set here. If the image is headed to a frame on your web page that's a certain size, you can actually request the image from ESRI at that size. Remember, we did that with the flags, and it looked skewed or distorted if it wasn't in the right format. So you have that ability. And here I've set it to 200 by 200. So often you're getting a JSON object back. If I remember, that's what we'll do in the lab, I believe. And notice, this goes back to your question, Dan. I'm glad that you brought it up. And just to reinforce that, if I click post, I still get the result. You notice the difference is there's no URL. So really, in many cases, there's not a huge difference in how you do it. I am curious. Nope, same failure. I'm suspecting that that's something with my computer. I'm just curious here. Oops. Yeah, it's working. It's something with Chrome on my machine. Notice if I go into so I click PDF, download image, save file. It actually created a PDF file. Let me open it. So that's how you would get, yeah?
Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm going back and forth in terms of the get and the post.
Yep.
So from what I'm understanding, the get has the parameters in the URL.
Correct.
How is that to our advantage?
The advantages would be, often it doesn't make that much of a difference. You can, if you're doing it this way, and not putting in code, you could bookmark the URL and go right back to it. Okay. It's more visible. There isn't a great deal of, advantage or disadvantage to be honest, except in those cases where get doesn't work, and then it would be a disadvantage.
And then on the post, you don't have the parameters are submitted in a form.
Yeah, they're submitted invisibly in a form, in a post. So it's just two different ways of doing the same thing that, frankly, in many cases is a wash, but there are those specific cases I mentioned where one would be better over another. And yeah, here it did create a PDF for me. It seems to be working for me in Internet Explorer, not in Chrome. So there's something wrong with my machine. And that goes back to your other question. Yeah, you definitely could return a PDF. And we've actually done that a lot. It's good that you asked that. I mean, that's a nice format to give to the user of your website. People are familiar with PDFs. They can save it. So we use that more than anything, really, is the PDF. I'm surprised, kind of surprised it's not working in Chrome, because that's not an unusual thing to do from our standpoint. I don't know I was getting a broken link, like there's a plugin problem or something. I'll have to take a look at that. But it should work in general. So that's some experimentation with the export map. There's a bunch of other things you can do on here that don't necessarily apply to the NetGeo, because this is a pretty simple map service. But if you have a map service with multiple feature layers in it, like roads, streets, let's say roads, parcels, water, houses, you could tell it which layers to turn on with the layer request. You could specify dots per inch. With a time-aware feature class, you could specify a certain range of time, and so on. So I kept mentioning these WKIDs, and we put in 4326. WKID stands for Well-Known ID for Map Projections. It's an organization that's tried to create a standard across the world for all of the many, many web projections, or map projections. And the reference for this is spatialreference.org. So pictured here, I searched for New York West and got two possible values. We use locally 102.717 a lot. If I go to that page, so that's where I got those numbers that I was talking about.
I was just about to ask you, where did you get that?
Yeah, those like how the heck did he know it was 4326? This is where you'd find out. So spatialreference.com. I guess you can contribute your own projections if you are so inclined. So some recently viewed projections. If you wanted to know about global geographic coordinate system called European 1979, not familiar with that one. You click on it, and it's 37201. You click on that and get it in JSON format. That's not terribly exciting. You can get more information about the projection if you're so inclined. There we go. And I'm not saying this is always the easiest thing to, it still could be a challenge. I searched on WGS 1984, which is a commonly used global geographic coordinate system that should be usable anywhere in the world. I got the correct result along with a bunch of other things. When I click on that, it's not 4326. That's interesting. I have the slightest idea what all those are. Okay, there's my 40. This is not always exact science. There's the one I use. I don't know the difference between WGS 1984 and WGS 84. The problem I think comes in is when nothing wrong with contributions from the public and it's good, but I think there's lots of duplicates in here because of that. Like for example, there's a projection called Just a Try. So when the public can contribute to projections, I think it can lead to confusion like that. I mean, this is the one I've used, 4326 WGS 84. It seems to occur over and over. Test and so on. But say you wanted every projection with China in the title. And so even that, boy, someone needs to clean this up. There's a lot of probably people testing or playing around in here. But if you wanted to draw it in the China Albers equal area conic, and there's a United States Albers equal area conic also, you would use that. That's the WKID 7564. But more than I've ever realized before, I might be a little bit leery of this page and do some verification if you're not using a well-known projection. There's a lot of weird things in here. I've never noticed that till tonight. You could search on, here's one we use for when we do work for the Navy in Florida, UTM Zone 16. But even here, look, JJ test. So it is a good reference, but some verification might be required now. There's a lot of stuff in there. So spatialreference.org. You can even, Google is a powerful thing. Sometimes you could even just say WKID WGS 84 and get answers that way. I've even found, maybe before the end of the semester we'll look, there's a lot of forums on ESRI that help for developers. Sometimes even though it's ESRI forums, I've had better luck searching them on Google than on ESRI's own search pages. Maybe we'll look at that before the semester's out. Other image formats, we looked at this. Here's an example of exporting a PDF format using a REST request. As I showed, JSON is another alternate output format. Use this. I said you would often use this. Now if you're just going onto the page and making a request, PDFs are great, images are great, but as I've noted here, and I think we'll do this in the lab, if you want an image back, often the way to do it would be to ask for JSON back, and you'll parse the JSON. We talked about the parse request on Monday to get at this URL. So if you click, as we saw in the demo a moment ago, if you ask for the response in JSON, rather than getting the image, you get a URL to the image that ESRI generated for us. And I keep saying ESRI, but this is true regardless of the source. If E&E, my company, publishes a map service, and we write the code against our company's map service, it would be E&E generating. It's not always ESRI. In a format like this, where we're teaching a class, it's easiest to use the ESRI services because they're publicly available. But often companies will publish their own map services with their own data. In other words, you don't have to get data from ESRI. You can get them from your own map services. Or just get an image back. That was our first example. And that's the discussion on REST services. In Lab 2, you will write an HTML page with JavaScript in it that will make a GET request to get a map back I think the GEO, in fact. And you'll use GET. You'll use a response back of JSON, and you'll parse the JSON out, and then you'll put the image on your own HTML page. That's Lab 2. We're going to switch gears, and I'm just going to make sure I could log in. We actually will learn to publish to ArcGIS Online. And actually, I'll show you that tonight. We'll also look at again. I need to add that ArcGIS collector content to the course still. Especially that are good, because I think we're progressing at a good pace, so there's extra time for that, which is good. So as I wrote on the slide, we'll investigate ArcGIS Online. We'll talk a lot about that. That will be tonight at this rate. I definitely wanted ArcGIS Online in this course. It's the latest, greatest thing VSRI is coming out with. They're not to exaggerate. I'll exaggerate a little. It's taking over the world, the GIS world. I mean, it's easy to use. People can get into it relatively inexpensively. You can do a lot of things with ArcGIS Online. It really, for new people, companies just getting into GIS, it's a great way to get their feet wet, and that's what ESRI wants. Even now, it can be kind of expensive and difficult to just jump into GIS. It's still better. 20 years ago, Erie County Water Authority spent a couple $1 million before they could get into GIS, because there weren't even, in 1992, there weren't even PCs like this. So they were buying Unix systems just to make a map. So things are progressively getting easier, and ArcGIS Online is the implementation of that. In my GEO 481 class, it's just Introduction to GIS. There's 50 students. And I make them, near the end of the course, they have to research a GIS project that they found online and talk about it. And then they get up and show the class. At least half of them, I was shocked, found a project that used ArcGIS Online. I mean, it literally is taking over, and I think when you go to seek GIS career or job, either seeking a new job or trying to apply it in your existing job, I think that's is of great benefit to you, in my opinion, to be able to say that you are familiar with it. So what I'll show tonight, and then we kind of do this before. So at the end of this lecture, we're almost done with the June 10th lecture. We'll look at publishing content to ArcGIS Online. I'll show you also publishing content to ArcGIS Server. It's real similar, because ArcGIS Online is basically ArcGIS Server. It's basically Esri's version of it. You're just publishing to Esri's ArcGIS Server. I'll show you how to do that in both cases. And then we'll pick up with the June 15th lecture, where we talk more about what ArcGIS Online is and how to use it. I'll do the ArcGIS Online first. So this is, I'll show both things. This is actually a remote desktop access to one of our machines at my workplace, and we'll look at ArcGIS Server there. But I'll start. This is my local laptop here now. So I'm going to add some data. I disconnected, didn't I? I did. So you're familiar with making an MXD symbology. So we have an ArcGIS, an ArcMap map. In order to do something with this, I have to sign in. And so I sign into ArcGIS Online with this file sign in. And I have to be careful because I have two. Personally have two ArcGIS Online. Well, I have three. One for a client, one for Uni, and one for UB. So I'm going to sign in to ArcGIS Online. And once you accept that invitation, and the invitations, you can do the same thing, and you'll also be able to publish. I think I'm going to have you do that. I've been worried about clogging up UB's system, but if we just have you publish a small data set, that won't be a problem. So I think I'll have you do that. But you will, when you accept that invitation, be able to do this same thing. On that system, there's nothing other than being the group owner for the class. There's nothing I can do that you can't. I don't believe. So I put in my username and password. So you would use the one you set up when you accepted. So now I'm connected to ArcGIS Online. I go File, Share As, Service. And so we can publish a service, save a definition file. A definition file is like an XML configuration file if you want to publish it later. Or if we already had a service out there, we could overwrite it. I'm going to publish a service. And I've got, maybe I can do both things from here and I don't have to log in. I've got two possibilities. It remembered this connection that I have. This is the ArcGIS server connection to our ArcGIS machine at work that I use. So when I'm doing my day job, when I'm publishing services, I use that connection. But notice, because I sign in, it says my hosted services, University at Buffalo, College of Arts and Sciences. So I have two choices. I'm going to publish to UB, and that's all restricted to that group. There's specific groups that Marty has set up for me so that I can invite for you. But the service name, we'll just call it June 10th. Hit continue. And so for ArcGIS Online, here's the parameters. I have two capabilities. This will be a little different with ArcGIS Server. We'll talk about that. Remember when I talked about map service or feature service in the REST endpoint? Here's how you would choose which one it is. Tiled mapping is like the National Geographic Service. Remember we saw the 14 levels, and all it does is serve up those pre-canned. I mean, literally, at least if I can afford this, I can't imagine the size of their servers. For that National Geographic server, they have billions. And I'm sure it is billions. I mean, think of the math of images out there just waiting to be served. That's how it can happen so quickly. Google, I think, perfected that with Google Maps. They just have some giant server there with billions and billions of images just waiting to be sent. So their map server doesn't have to generate the images. It just knows which ones to pull. Feature access, however, is where we actually serve out to the user the actual GIS data. So I will choose that. And so here's some things that so I click on feature access. Here's where we can define which operations are allowed. If I want people to be able to create data, delete, update, or sync. We'll use sync with collector. Sync tells you the people have permission to check out the data to their tablet or their phone. So for collector, we need to make sure sync is checked on for that reason. It allows them to check out your data. And remember, we just finished talking about REST URLs. Once we're done, when we publish a service, you will then get a REST URL for your new service. Item description. Something that it actually requires a summary and tags. And I can choose who to share it with. I can share it with everyone in the world. You asked the question earlier about who can get this. If you click that on with RTS Online, we could make our map that we're creating now available to anyone in the world. If they stumble upon the REST endpoint, they're free to do it. Or I can restrict it to just people that have a University of Buffalo RTS Online account, or even more so, just to a certain group. Other classes use this account. It looks like I'm the only one that set up a group. So we have last year's summer group and then this year's. So if you click just that, you could restrict the map to just the people that accept it. I think there's just 2 of us at this point. But I'll just say everyone. And then I will analyze. You don't have to analyze, but analyze will come back. It's kind of styled like Visual Studio. Remember in the desktop class you built a project and it would come down with the warnings and errors at the bottom. Analyze does something similar. And luckily there are no errors. An error would prevent us from being able to publish this, but there are none. There's a warning. Map is being published with the full data frame extent. That's okay. Sometimes, like say this was, what their meaning is, say our project only, we have all this data in here, but our project only included Wisconsin. They would suggest like limit the data frame extent to just your study area. But I don't care about that. So once I'm satisfied, I can hit publish. And so it is, and we'll do both of these because they're going to be slightly different. So it's creating service definition, packaging in progress. When this data is local, it's on my C drive, and it's going to be available to the public. It needs to take this data and ship it to the cloud. So that's what's going on right now. It also needs to ship the parameters that I chose, like the names of the layers, the colors that I chose, and so on. So the service definition defines that, and now it's packaging locally. It's packaging that data so it can send it to ESRI's cloud. And that's what's happening now. It never happens as quick as one. So that's server-side post-processing. That usually means the data got to Esri, and now they're unpacking it. Shouldn't be too bad here. That UB's internet connection is blazing fast compared to what I'm used to. I need to start uploading the YouTube videos before I go home. my Time Warner limits to 1 megabyte upload, so it takes forever. I tried to hear once and it happened in like 30 seconds. Probably late by the time we're done. Plus, the more people looking and waiting, the slower it gets. So we're going to move the other way. I'm somewhat surprised because these are not large layers. I guess while that's doing that, I will use my maybe it'll finish. I'll use my work machine and show you ArcGIS server. Well, since we're just sitting here waiting. It's going to be really similar, which is kind of some of the point of what I want to show. Oh, let's go back. So you have.
Under capabilities, I have another choice.
Oh yeah. You probably kept it as tiled mapping instead of feature access. Did you keep tiled mapping on?
I mean, it's just a tiled mapping.
Yeah. If there's tiled mapping is checked on, there's another property for caching that helps control how you set up map caches.
And also, for the first time, I didn't see the publish icon on the upper right. Instead of like a package or something, I hit it and try to package the.
Could you have chose create a service definition instead of? Let me try that. I don't know for sure. I think if you pick create a service definition, it says package. Let me try that. I haven't done that in a while. Try create a map package. Nope. Oh, that's not what I wanted to try. File share as service. Nope. Share as service. So now I'm publishing to ArcGIS server. I'll see if the so we have, if you come to publish a lot of services with ArcGIS server, you'll see some more options. We break down services into client folders just for organization. says published till. I've never seen it say package. That's strange.
Yes, I didn't know it.
But-
I'm trying to
You trying now it says publish.
it just
Very
disappeared
strange.
and I cannot find it anymore.
Oh no, yeah, once it's gone, it won't come back. Well, let me know if you find it. I've never seen that. So for ArcGIS Server, notice that you do have some different options. There's more parameters. Like I can set text to be aliased. If you're a graphic designer, you'll be into that. You can change the maximum number of records on a query. By default, to make things speedier, if you do a query, it'll only return 1,000 records maximum. Sometimes we have projects where we need to up that total if the data sets we're querying are greater than 1,000. There's a bunch of settings. I usually change that to false, so I don't want to create schema locks. And then an output directory. So now when it's ArcGIS server, it's not Esri making the images, it's your own server. So you specify a those JPEGs that were being created in PDFs, now they go to a local folder. And so you can specify that there. Capabilities, instead of tile mapping and feature access, it's mapping and feature access. I can also, you can make it a WMS. I've never done that for like an open source web mapping service. And you can click on KML. So here, with ArcGIS Server, I know the REST URL beforehand. So there is the web address. When I publish my local server service, that's the web address that will be the REST endpoint. And so for mapping, as I mentioned earlier, it's map server, and feature access will be feature server. So if you're doing things where you're going to make changes to the data, if you're going to do complex queries, you'd want to do feature access. If you just want a picture back, map access. The same operations I would click sync on if I want to use this in a tablet or disconnect the data. You can set how much machine time it will take up, so you can see the more settings available, or timeout settings. Beyond these seconds, if the server doesn't respond in that many seconds, the server will give up. So you can set timeout. Reboot or restart the service every 24 hours. You know, I'm not seeing, I think that's at the server level. We were talking about cleanup somewhere, and I think that's at the server level, though. You can specify how long the image that's generated stays around before the server cleans it up. Caching, like you saw here, you have to be careful with caching. Usually nowadays, we used to cache more when this first came out. Caching dynamically basically builds caches on the fly as people use certain areas. As people use certain areas of your site, it will build caches for areas that are used. So if people zoom in to Shanghai, ArcGIS Server will make caches of Shanghai. If nobody ever zooms to Beijing, there'll never be a map of cache of Beijing. That's much more efficient than generating every possible result. I mean, that can generate a huge... So if you click cache, you can cache up to 19 levels. That's actually, because there's nothing on here but states. I've had this can blow up. I don't think I ever generate tiles anymore. We had a project where we first tried to do this. Used to not have a choice. It was a pipeline that covered half the western United States, and it generated 200 gigabytes of cached imagery. And that prompted a visit from our network administrator. Once I clicked run, I got a knock on my door. It's like, what are you doing? That was a long conversation. And it also took 11 days to build the cache, which isn't good, because they wanted it. Could you build this right now so we can see it later today? It actually took 11 days to complete, because it had 300 or 400 million images to make. And then the project manager comes and says, could you change that from orange to green? Like, No, I can't. Or you can wait another 11 days. So it's gotten a lot better since that. But the response time is now quick enough that I don't remember the last time. And this is not calculating right, or it should be much, much higher. But if you look at the levels, think of this as exponential. All of the space is taken up by that lowest level. I mean, at 1 to 500,000, you could cache all the United States, maybe 3 or 4 images. But every time you zoom in a level, it exponentially increases the number of images. But what I was saying is I can't remember the last time we actually built. I truly can't remember the last time we built a cache. The response time of servers gotten good enough where I don't believe it's necessary any longer. Thank God. So let me turn that off. So now I can click Analyze. Oh, this won't work because. But maybe we don't have to continue that far. It has to be in a registered GEO database in order to publish to server. I don't think I want to go that far. Hopefully we're done. Oh, this actually came back and was published successfully. So now you see your options, both publishing to online and server. You see the server gives you more options, but you can see how they're similar. So I can go back to my content. And we can see a service definition June 10th. As that shows information about it. And we have a feature layer, June 10th. And so we can see the sharing. I shared it with this group, but that's kind of moot because I shared it with the world. I can export the data to a variety of formats, a shapefile, CSV, file geodatabase. I can track usage, see who's looking at my data, publish a tile layer from it. Don't need to get into that. I'm going to click Edit to see our settings. I can prevent it from being accidentally deleted. I've clicked editing, yes, by default. I can allow editors or users to make changes to my map. You can restrict that. I can allow others. I can do everything because it's my own map. But I could check that if I want others to be able to export from this. Right now only I can. I enabled sync if we were to use this with collector. If in other words you wanted a tablet app that used those data layers. And I can keep track of who did what. So I can say add layer to map. Do that again. I'm not publishing this way. Sometimes it's really slow. I haven't quite figured out. Our ArcGIS Online doesn't have that problem. But I had this last year with the UB account, and I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, these are really basic layers. It looks like we're going to have that again. I have some other services in here that aren't slow like that. Let me check something while we're... So if you wanted to change the service, it's already published, you just say overwrite pick the service name, it'll overwrite it. See how slow that is? You can kind of see how it's now, the map we published is available on the web. Part of it. You know, it's strange, I did something similar. I updated some of the lecture and lab content because it's changed since last summer. And it's basically the same layer. Look how fast it is. Maybe it's the counties that make it slow, I don't know. But I still haven't figured out what I did different. Just have sometimes it draws so fast. Maybe I'll try the June 10th map. But I'll turn off counties.
I was wondering when you got the map, the content.
Yeah, to get to the map,
You said you had it out, you already had it on your.
Yeah, I already had the shapefile on my desktop. But about a week, that's what's so strange. I just published this now, and it's taking forever. About a week ago, I published this one to make some updates to the slides, and it comes up right away. And I've seen that behavior before with the UB account, and I haven't quite figured out what's done differently. But you see the general idea. That now our data is available for the world. Now it's not too happy at all. I'm going to. But now if I do search for layers, you can search, when you're searching for data, you can search within your own organization. You can search on ArcGIS Online, the web, or so on. I don't know if it'll show up yet. See, I found it. It's in ArcGIS Online, so anyone in the world could search and add that map. Good luck trying. So here you can search for anything online and click Add. I just searched for tornado. But again, you're at the mercy of the internet, just like you saw, just because something's on here. Like, for example, this looks cool. Tornado warnings, but it's not working. So here I have, these are, that one's not working. Here's a map service someone published and decided to share with the world. It's working much better. I think that actually happened last May. 3 tornadoes that tore through Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Tornado paths.
Yeah. Tornado paths. I think my brother lives there. I remember those happening. There's two summers ago. And this illustrates that this is not a perfect science. I mean, we had trouble with our own, and it looked like a lot of the items that I searched added weren't able to be added, but I was able to. This one works. It shows examples of storm reports. Yeah, there was a tornado near Albany yesterday, which is unusual. Tornado in Pennsylvania. Wind gusts in Maine, and so on. So there's a lot that you can find. On ArcGIS Online. Are there any questions? A little early. I'll go in. We'll start the June 15th lecture. It's a little early. We'll start that a little bit before our break. As you might have guessed, we'll continue to talk about ArcGIS Online.
Just a practice. Sorry.
Sure. No.
You got any place where we can get some data, like, populate, and try to just practice
play with.
Publishing?
Well, yeah, I do.
I see they have some shape files in here, just elevation and stuff like that. Right?
In the M drive geography GEO 503, I think I have 1 or 2 shape files in a data folder. I was actually preparing that. There's urban areas.
Okay.
That's on there to prep you to do this lab 6 that I'm putting together.
Okay.
If you go to, I think it's still there, GEO 555 from the spring semester. I have a folder Esri data. There's a bunch of some shape files that we use for some of the labs in GEO 555 this spring. I'm sure others, I'd have to look, I don't know offhand, I'm sure others have data available on there. But we'd have to look and see where. Hopefully those are things that can get you started. That's good. I think practice on something, this is good. So, we will talk about using ArcGIS Online. We'll talk about how the world uses it versus organizational. Now you do have to sign in. No, you don't. You have an organizational user, which we are, versus just the general public. Now, so you can go to arcgis.com, click Map, and get to a map and do some very basic things. You can switch to National Geographic. So there's some things you can do without having an account. Notice there's not very much. You could print it, measure. I can add layers. what is this? Philadelphia Fire Department facilities, for example. But without an account, you might notice one very important thing missing: save. Anyone can go online, make these maps, but it's just to play and kind of get your appetite going for it. To really work with ArcGIS Online, you have to have one of these accounts, which you all now have for the course. I mean, I don't think they purge it very often, so if you have an interest, you probably, I don't want to speak for the Earth, could continue to use it and play with it after the course. You can sign up for, oh gosh, you can create a public account to do some things. It'll be limited also. But hopefully if you want to play with it further, they'll leave your UB account open. If you work, and we'll get to that on some of the slides. But the best thing is if you have an organizational account. An organizational account gives you access to all of these features, lets you publish data. That was another thing missing from the general public map. There was no way to add your data like we just did. You're using what's out there, and you can't save it. I also have seen this. There we go. The cloud is great. Everyone wants to go to the cloud. You're at the mercy of the cloud and speed sometimes. So here's my two accounts. So once I sign in, I now see the UB splash page. I've attached my web page to the UB organization account. And there's other things on here that I didn't. I think some other classes have been working with this, which is good. So ArcGIS.com is the way to get to that, and you click there to sign in. Usage is not based on a specific license. They're doing it by usage of the data. And this doesn't seem like they would make a lot of money, but it adds up. So to sign up, this way, you sign up and then you also use what are called map credits for certain things, and you only get so many credits. Now that that's said, so these are some things that use credits. And most of the credit usage, it comes from publishing data. There is no longer any credit usage for using the map. So it used to be, I think very briefly, you use the map, zoom around, it would cost credits. None of that costs credits. But to upload 10 megabytes costs 2.4 credits per month. So that service I published, I think, had 50 megabytes in it of the counties and states. So that would cost you 10 or 11 credits that's 12 credits a month. A credit is roughly 10 cents, so it would cost you $1.20 a month. So they're not making money on the credits. It's almost nothing. UB gets a lot of free, they're very good educational facilities. And I think UB has some enormous amount of credits available because frankly they want us to learn it. And they want you to get a job and tell your employer that they need to use it. So storing tiles, you saw the tile mapping options cost 1.2 credits per gigabyte, so that's not very expensive. Geocoding can add up. For every 40 addresses, or every 1,000 addresses, it costs 40 credits. So it costs $4 to geocode 1,000 geocodes. That can add up. This used to be free, and I almost did this again. I work at the Erie County Water Authority, and they have 200,000 customers, and I almost geocoded at 200,000 customers. That would have added up. And there's a lot of more detailed things that use credits. So some organizations, E&E used 90 credits one year, so $9 for all the projects we do. It would cost $9, but it didn't cost $9 because we get a free amount. So what they do is, if you own the ArcMap software, ArcGIS Desktop, for every license of ArcGIS Desktop your company already has, you get 100 free credits. And we own a pretty big company. We own 43 ArcGIS Desktop licenses. And so we get 4,300 credits a year free. And the most we've ever used is, well, they were using it for geocoding. Almost all of it comes to people with a tablet in the field wanting to look up their hotel. And frankly, we used 101 credits last year out of the 4,300 free ones. So we're not
adding up the rollover.
There's no rollover. It's not like so you use it. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? I think storage of data costs us 3 or 4 credits for 30 cents. Even 101 is $10 a year. Here's where they make the money. So we get all these free credits. We know how, and I don't think this applies to UB. So for those, so in our case, we have 43 ArcGIS Desktop licenses. We also get 43 users. So we can get 43 usernames out. Let's say we use 43 people up, and I'm dealing with that as we speak. We've used 43 people, and I'm getting people emailing me saying, I want an ArcGIS Online account. So I've been playing a shell game of asking people, hey, do you still need that? If your project's done, can I take yours away? We're up against that limit, and it's not a fun place to be. So beyond that, this is where they make their money. To get 5 more users, it would be $2,500 a year. 50 users, this is where we would go. It would be $10,000 a year. And that gets to the point it's not cheap anymore. That's where they make their money, not with the credits. So in theory, for 6 of you in the class to sign up, it would cost $2,500 a year for me to say, please, plus a little bit, to say, please sign up these 6 students for this course. Now, I say in theory because I'm sure UB gets, not unlimited, but they get a huge amount of users. And the SUNY system has desktop licenses, so we're well within that limit. But if you were a brand new GIS user at your company, you didn't have any existing licenses, those are the people that pay a little bit more. You would have to buy 5 users for $2,500 a year, and you get 2,500 credits, which they would add up quicker because if you don't already have servers, you would be storing data on the cloud. So it's a little more costly. It's still not bad, frankly, for new organizations. For existing organizations that have all these built-up free credits like UB or like my company, it's very, very cost-effective. Just today, someone asked me, we've done like 50 projects where we've used the tablets, the collector, and someone said, how much does that cost in licensing? And I said, well, nothing. They said, no, really? I said, yeah, really. It hasn't cost a thing, other than our because we're already paying for the ESRI license. We have been. If I hadn't done those 50 projects, the price would have been the same. So it really has cost us nothing. But because we already had that infrastructure already in place, if you're a brand new company wanting to do 50 tablet project, you'd spend a lot more than nothing.
And the licenses stay with the company. It's not like one individual would go and take the license with you, correct? It's like
that's correct.
Attached. Okay.
Yeah, the company pays for. Now that would be a little bit. Well, no, because we attach the desktop license easy. It's on the company's server, so that it stays with the company. Now I am inviting people in my company to have a license, and so theoretically, if one of them quit, I mean, ESRI is managing that license. They can continue to use it. That's hasn't happened yet, but in that case, it would be on me to remember that and delete them.
So do you have a case where if one person, like I said, one person is finished working on a project and you say, all right, you're off the machine,
Yes, thankfully, yeah, because I've had no choice. Because I have 43 licenses available and I have about 60 people that use it. So that's...
Is that 16 or 60?
60.
60, okay.
So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm calling up, hey, I think you're done in the field. Can I take your license away? It's a login, really, just like you're logging. They're logging in just like you are when you're in the class. We also, not to overcomplicate, but I think I should talk about it, though. There's a new product. So right now, that's what I'm playing the shell game, asking people if they'll give it up. I got a guy going out to the field next week. Could you give up yours? So we stay under the 43, and we avoid having F management for that. There's a new product. This is where I likes to keep things interesting. called ArcGIS Portal. So ArcGIS Online, I'll talk about it now. Maybe I should be talking about this a half an hour from now after we talk about online. But you'll see, and you already saw how you load all this stuff into the cloud, and there's all these set tools in ESRI's cloud. ArcGIS Portal lets you build all that infrastructure on your own server. So you can have a thing that looks just like ArcGIS Online, but it's actually on your own server and not on Esri's server. Because we have an ArcGIS Server Advanced license, we now get it for free. The ArcGIS Portal previously was $40,000 a year. And then when I was at the ESRI conference last summer, someone told me, oh, it's 10.3, it's free now. I'm like, what? Could you repeat that? And I think at 40,000 they weren't selling a whole lot. So now with Portal comes 50 more free users. So I just have to find the time. We've been kind of busy. I have to find the time to install that. So when I install Portal, we'll essentially have 93 users, and I think that'll give us breathing room. It's the lesson, which is a good one, I think, is at this time last year I was like begging people, hey, don't you want to try this? And now they're beating down my door wanting to log in. So it's really, because of the capabilities, it's really exploded. And I see that happening not just where I am, but everywhere, as organizations see what they can do with it. So this Portal, and I haven't even installed it yet. I want to do it Friday. I think it's going to be a quiet day. It gives you 50 free additional logins. So we would be able to use our 43 with ArcGIS Online, and then 50 more with Portal, and have 93 organizational logins. And that's enough to cover us. We're more than 43, but not more by 50. So that's a little bit of the ESRI software out there. And the big difference in Portal and Online is, with ArcGIS Online, we're publishing to Esri's cloud. Portal lets you have your own cloud, and all of the infrastructure is on your own server. And there's advantages and disadvantages of each. Esri Online, I know it was slow a minute ago, but in general it's very fast. They have a whole server farm dedicated to this, so that's the advantage. Someone else can manage the server. They've got a whole team of people that keep an eye on it, so that's the advantage. Let someone else deal with that. On the flip side, there's obviously an advantage to having it local too, and there may be security requirements and so on that would require that. So that's a little bit of background on ArcGIS Online site. It's really, I'm not sure I've seen something take off so fast. I mean, they're really, at least so far, being pretty successful with it. I'm not going to get into this here. I don't know much about it yet, but ArcGIS Professional is the next thing after that. It's going to replace ArcMap, which freaks me out because we use ArcMap 8 hours or more every day, every 5 days, 6 days a week. And ArcGIS Professional is like a desktop version of ArcGIS Online. And they definitely want to replace ArcMap with that. Once they do that, you'll need an ArcGIS Online account to use Professional. So there's some major, a lot of companies are going to that licensing model. Microsoft has done it for Windows 10. If you're not a pre-existing Windows 10 user, now you'll have a signed login to Microsoft. Adobe has gone to that model for things like Photoshop. So ESRI is now doing the same thing, where they're pushing more towards licensing usage of the software through a subscription. It's kind of the way of the world. So you sign in with the username and password that you were set up when you got the invitation. Did I skip a slide? And we'll stop in just a second for the break. You sign in, just said that. And pictured is the splash screen for the UB College of Arts and Sciences, is the group that sponsored this organizational account. As I said, I'm not too worried. I'm not going to load anything huge, but I don't know the totals, but universities and educational systems get just a boatload of credits and users. Jack Dangerman, in fact, the CEO of Esri, last summer, the big news at the summer conference was he has granted unlimited credits and users to every kindergarten through high school, K through 12 school in the United States. they haven't done a good job of getting the word out. I mean, 99% of schools have no idea. I think that they have that out. But obviously, they want to get people used to using it. It pays back for them when those kids grow up and want to use it in their workplace. If you can ever go, that's a great conference. Not enough. The ESRI User Conference in San Diego. It's July 20th week this year. I can't go this year. I always I run into former students all the time, and a lot of them have had jobs at Esri. Esri is a great place to work, they say. So if you ever get a chance to go, there's so much you can learn at that conference. And San Diego's not half bad either. It's a nice city to visit any time of year. So this might be a good, when we come back, we'll talk about making maps from ArcGIS Online. So we'll take a break here and start up in a few minutes. Give me a chance to save the